we thought it would be neat to actually bring some non-Trainual folks up, some customers of ours up, to talk about how they use Trainual and have you all get to learn and hear from them. And so in this next session, we have three wonderful guests that I will call up. Why don't you come on up? We have Katie Copeland, who's the Learning Development Manager at ProTech Building Services. Rachel Pitts, who's the VP of Operations at Veteran Service Brands. Siobhan Park is the Head of Training and Marketing at Reply. Reply was the 2023 Trainual Customer of the Year. And our host, Mallory Glessner. Mallory is the Manager of Content and Product Marketing here at Trainual. Stage is yours.
What's up, everybody? How are we feeling after lunch? Good? Excited? Awesome. Well, these three incredible ladies were selected as part of this customer panel today because they've each experienced incredible growth in their businesses over the last few years. And so we're really excited to chat with them today and get to hear their stories. So welcome, ladies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So stoked to be here.
Siobhan, I want to start with you because Reply's grown from 25 to 45 people very quickly. And I think you could tell us about this journey and how you're using Trainual now, because a lot of people can resonate with that size team and just all of the things that you've been going through.
Yeah, so I'm Siobhan Park, the Head of Training and Marketing at Reply. We're an apartment marketing company, and I was kind of one of the OG employees. I've heard this story from a couple people now. I came in when Reply was about 6 months old, and I'm in my 6th year, and I've been here from basically the beginning. And kind of anyone who's been in the startup world, you kind of serve as a head of a department at every point in time. So I've been accounting, I've been operations, marketing, everything. So as we started to grow and bring on more people, we needed to start documenting things because we were a startup. We were going so fast. We just didn't really have time to sit down and start putting, pen to paper, type it out, the things that we needed. And so that's how I kind of got into the training world, was that it made sense for me to kind of start that. So I started documenting everything I knew from all of the teams that I either worked in formally or just kind of informally was involved with. And that's where we got to Trainual today. We now have, like Mallory said, about 45 people. I have Lindsay here, who's on my training team. And that's just kind of where we've come thus far, and Trainual's become kind of an integral part of being able to onboard our team, keep our processes, especially because we are a hybrid team across the US as well.
So I think that's interesting because you talk about wearing a lot of hats, and obviously we have Chris Ronzio, who's recorded some very funny ads, if you've seen them, about wearing a lot of hats, and so we're no stranger to that. And you mentioned in our discussion prior to this how things are just always go, go, go at Reply. And I think a lot of people here can resonate with that pretty deeply. How do you find time to review what's working and what's not while keeping things running and just growing at the rate that you are?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a challenge for us for a long time, was just trying to find the time. And there was a point where I kind of had to just look at myself and say, we have to do it. It's so easy to make excuses as to why you're not going to do it right now. Oh, I've got to get this done, or it's really important. This is more important for the business. And there was just a point in time where I had to sit down and go, no, this is the most important thing for the business. So it's hard to have that self-control to go, I need to do it, but if it's not going to get done, it's never going to get done. And that's something that I've had to help instill in other people, because pretty much everyone has kind of the same thought. It's hard to find the time. And so that's kind of the biggest thing for me, and one of the top things I tell people is that you just have to find time to prioritize it. For me personally, I oversee 2 teams, training and marketing. I actually have time blocks. So Thursday is my dedicated training and development day. So that day I'm not allowed to do anything marketing. None of my meetings are allowed to be marketing. It has to be training and development. And I started doing that 6 months ago, and I've done more in those 6 months than I did the year before that. So
I love it. That's such a good tip. And Rachel, I think this is also a really exciting growth achievement for you guys as well. You now have 83 franchise locations at Veteran Services Brands. That's incredible. What's been your biggest challenge in scaling so quickly and keeping everyone aligned?
Yeah, we actually signed our 83rd operation just last week, so it's pretty exciting for our epoxy business. Thanks. So, okay, thank you. I'll pass that along to them. So we started about 7 years ago with an idea of opening a veteran-only franchise. And I say we, Jack Child, the founder of our company, started that idea, and about a year later, he signed on his first operation, and for a few years, a couple years, he was the only corporate member. And so he signed up with Trainual, and that was his way of overcoming the challenge of having a widespread team. We're nationwide now, from Hawaii to New Hampshire and everywhere in between. So for him to be able to disseminate information and maintain brand standards, Trainual has been vital for that.
I love that. And I think it's really important that you're going to have to tell everybody the Cran story, okay? They need to hear it. But you have great relationships, and when people hear this story, they'll understand why it is that you have great relationships and low turnover, which I think is something that we don't hear a lot of in the franchise industry. What's been the secret to maintaining such a strong culture and great relationships across so many locations? And obviously, you guys aren't stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, Sasha would be really proud of us. We make sure to invest in fun. We have an annual conference where everybody comes together, so it's really great. One of our core values is camaraderie, and so there's always practical jokes and fun, like neon tracksuit outfits. And if anybody's familiar with the Marine Corps, they joke that they like to eat crayons. And so at our last awards banquet, we passed out crayons and coloring sheets just for the Marines, and a few of them did, in fact, eat the crayons. So, it's a good time.
I love that story. And so, Katie, your team has also seen a lot of growth, probably the largest company on the stage today, from 350 to 400 people and growing, doubling your revenue every couple of years. But what stands out to me is not just the massive growth that your team has achieved, but really how you in particular approach training and creating that experience that we hope to create here at Trainual. Tell us about that experience and kind of what it's been like for you.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name's Katie, super stoked to be here. I started at ProTech about 10 years ago, and when I started, we maybe only had about 150 employees at that time, and our organization is broken into a lot of different teams. So I started on a team of admin, and we only had 5 team members. So it was a very, very close-knit, very tight-knit team. And because of that, processes were not on the forefront of our mind. So we didn't even have written processes. We just had a team of 5 experienced coworkers, and if I had any questions, we did a lot of shoulder-to-shoulder training, and I would just ask them if I ran into a stuck or something that I had a question on. So having that experience, it was basically a 4-to-1 ratio of experts to newbie, and I learned a lot really fast, and I just kind of soaked up all that knowledge, and that training experience was so amazing because I always had someone to go to, and just that constant direction. But then we experienced this kind of phase of just very serious, very fast growth, and that happened over short kind of bursts. We would have these stages of growth where all of a sudden you're getting more employees, which means you need more trainers. That leads to more perspectives and different messages being shared across the board. So what became a 4-to-1 ratio of training then became a 1-to-20 ratio for training. And I could see our new employees coming in, and things were falling through the cracks. Onboarding was not great, and it was not scalable. And that I'm a die-hard problem solver, and it just killed me. It fired me up, and I just saw this problem that needed to be fixed. So I am also someone that needs a little proof in the pudding, and I wasn't sure if a training program. I was really new to that whole world, and I had worn many hats, and I was like, well, maybe if I just wrote down the processes or did videos and had it stored somewhere, that would make my life a little bit easier, and I could give the employees a little bit better of an onboarding experience. So I created a secret program on a training website and rolled it out to one employee, and it just caught fire and kind of exploded. And in talks with other teams in the organization, we realized that it was a problem that we had across the board. It wasn't just my team. It was an organizational problem. And so the company decided as a whole that it was so critical that we needed to make it a company priority to start working on processes and really get serious about it. So we put our foot down, and a couple months later we discovered Trainual, and it has been amazing to just see the difference. Round of applause, please, because Trainual is amazing. But what I realized is that having a training process, it doesn't just affect the individuals in your hierarchy of your company. It directly impacts the scalability and growth of your company. It needs to happen if you want to see growth.
Well said. So the top secret training became Trainual. I love it.
Top secret.
And I want to come back to something you said, because you said at one point you felt completely burnt out as a trainer. And I think Sarah did a beautiful job of talking about this, because it really becomes the point where you just can't train everybody. And then we get into that sink or swim mentality of, hey, I don't have somebody to train you, so you're kind of on your own. Either you figure it out or you fail. How did you shift from that sort of sink or swim mentality, which I know ate up at you, like kept you up at night, you hated it. How did you shift to a serious focus on processes, and what were the results that you saw from that?
Yeah, so there was a lot of burnout there, and I love that you kind of asked about burnout, because it's something that we all experience at some point in our career. That's a good feeling because it signifies that there's a problem. So before we dive into that, I'm going to give a little sports analogy. But there's a big difference between business and sports. So in sports, you have your game season, you're game ready, you're playing your games, you might have some wins, you might have some losses. But then in your sports team, you have an off season. And in that off season, you have that time to watch your game footage, to refine your skills, to kind of regroup and pause, to kind of work on your team so you're ready for the next season. In business, there is no off season, so you have to build it into your day-to-day. So having those time blocks, I know a couple of us actually block off time in our schedules. And beyond that, block off time with your coworkers so they can learn how to do it too. Speaking of burnout and kind of shifting from that sink or swim mentality over to processes, we were very strategic in how we planned it out. Our CSM, hey Will, hey Emma, where are you guys at? They really helped us with that kind of beginning structure, but because we have so many teams in our company, all with very different processes, we had to kind of have a plan before just throwing everything in a Trainual. And half of our team is also bilingual, where English is not a first language, so that was also a big thing that we needed to consider. So the first thing that we needed to do, the company needed to acknowledge that there was a problem. So first we just needed to talk about it. And the problem was so big that the problem became the champion for change at our company. So that was huge, and it got everyone the buy-in to see that this needed to happen, and so we kind of decided as a group that we needed to develop a vision to solve that problem. So first, I presented a vision to our leadership team with very measurable action items that we would accomplish within 2 years. And that looked like, on the screen, I put up bullet points. It looked crazy because there was a lot to go into it, but the first thing was
It was beautiful, by the way, I've seen it.
It was a little wild. But it gave measurable action items for them to look at and see like, okay, that's what this will look like. And an example of that was, we will have 400 processes published in Trainual. We will have every role in the company will have required certifications through Trainual that aligns with their job description. Every team will have a customized onboarding for that role's experience. So things like that were all bullet pointed on the vision, but then it's like looking at a skyscraper like, oh my, how are we gonna make this happen? So from there, we turned it into a roadmap. And what that looked like, we turned that vision into quarterly bite-sized chunks that you could do in 5 minutes or less and spread across the team. So we have strategic planning meetings, and we kind of broke it down like quarter one, the team's responsibility was, so we have a bunch of different organizational functions. We have HR, IT, admin, operations, field operations, sales. All those different teams had a team lead, and their responsibility for the first quarter was just to write out what processes do you have? What processes overlap with other departments? So the first quarter, that's all they needed to do was not write how to do them, just write what do you do? That was an easy enough starting point to get them to get involved. And I think starting that way was really helpful. And then the next quarter became, okay, let's look at each of our team's lists. What are the top 10 most critical processes? And let's do some one-on-one workshops to get together and talk through that process, write it out together, so that way they're also having small interactions of becoming content creators, these team leads. So we're still in the building stages of it, but those two things were kind of how we started building. And then beyond that, now that it's becoming more established in the company, and I think this is the biggest thing, is establishing a cadence. So every team is different. Our field workers are not going to be on their phones all day. Their experience in Trainual is going to be more onboarding to learn our culture, that sort of thing. But they're like, fixing drywall. They are fixing safety issues in homeowners associations. So they don't have typically the access to be in Trainual often, but our admin team does. So we focused on our admin team and established a stricter cadence with them first. And what that looks like is that we have these weekly huddles, training huddles. We'll assign a Trainual and we'll kind of give a brief overview of it. And we now have about 40 admin team right now. And so we have our weekly huddle and we will assign a Trainual, and then they're expected to do it before the following week's huddle. So we start the next huddle by closing the loop on that first training. We go over the top missed questions, and that opens up a feedback loop of like, okay, is maybe something in the training not making sense, or is this something that we need to address with the whole team to clarify? So establishing that weekly cadence was super effective. But I think I forgot to talk about like the big turning point of our growth, but that happened when we started acquiring other companies. And there was a small team of us that were in charge of acquisition, and this was before Trainual, where we didn't have written processes. And we made it work, but if we would have had Trainual in that point of time, it would have been a lot more seamless. So I can't say enough just the leaps and bounds we've seen with growth in just making sure that we were very strategic about rolling out Trainual to our teams.
That's awesome. I actually found Trainual too, being on the acquisitions team at my last PEO firm, and so I know how much Trainual comes in clutch for those situations, and so being able to kind of see that and put that into play, that's incredible. Overall, what's your biggest takeaway for folks today, if they had to jot something down when it comes to processes and training?
Yeah, so when you guys are creating your trainings, the most effective trainings that we found with our teams, they have activities embedded in them. So we have embedded one-on-one check-ins in some of our trainings just to make sure that we are following up with our learners, because I noticed at first when we started building it out is that our learners would go through the content and maybe someone in charge of the training would just like, see you later, good luck. But having those activities built into the training, or having peer reviews where it has a step in there that says, okay, complete this task and email it to so-and-so. So-and-so will review that and give you feedback. It's creating that loop to make sure that your learners are actually receiving the information. And then again, the cadence huddles, establishing that cadence it's been invaluable to our growth.
Awesome. How about you, Rachel? You have a knack for finding the right people and the right partners, and I think that's so difficult, especially given the industry that you're in. Talk to us a little bit about that, and maybe something we can take away.
Yeah, so we are, like I said earlier, a veteran-exclusive franchise brand. We started with Trainual 5 years ago, and that was when my boss was the sole corporate member. We now have 8 corporate staff members, and I believe we've been able to be consistent and maintain that growth because we've kept with the same processes and we've updated slowly along the years. We'll be doing some tidy up for sure. But by maintaining our Trainual account and disseminating that information. It's the same onboarding for every person, and we do those the intro calls ahead of time just so that they feel welcome. But a really, really big part of that is finding the right person for the right seat. And we're very lucky that veterans are easily trained. They're already used to that lifestyle, and so they're used to following processes. It's embedded in their culture. And so I think that's a big part of our success. But I think that's available also in the civilian sector. So.
How about you, Siobhan? I know you said if I get up here and I do this customer panel, I have to talk about culture, and it's so important to growth and processes and training and all the things we're talking about, finding the right people. So talk to us about that and maybe one thing we can take away in that space.
Yeah, so I'm a really big proponent of culture, kind of identified myself as a culture queen there for a while. And something that I've noticed people talk a lot about are good culture fits and bad culture fits, but I think people don't talk enough about the okay culture fits. And those are the people that, they come to work, they do a good job, it's fine. But those can be culture killers just as much as the bad culture fits. And I say that from someone who's been in that training and development realm, and how I've seen that firsthand. So for example, in our culture, we actually literally have a 20-page culture code. We have a whole book that defines what does culture look like at Reply. And one of my favorite lines in the culture code, and I think it applies a lot to training and development, is make it easier, make it better. And then the other one I really like is solving for inefficiencies. And so to be a good culture fit at Reply, that's what you're doing. You're constantly solving for inefficiencies. You're finding ways to make things easier and better for yourself, for our customers, for the company. And we have identified over the past couple of years that if someone is not living the culture code that way, that comes through, and that obviously comes through with with customers and things like that, but it comes through with our internal things too. So the training and the development, that comes through when we're not able to get those processes documented. I think that's the first half of the battle. The second half is then once you have it documented, what do you do with it? Because for us, we want to be able to see where can we optimize, where can we make things better, where are people doubling up, and so we need that first step where people are helping us. As far as something I think that pretty much everyone can take back that we've embedded, and I thought it fit really well with our culture code. We actually took it from one of Trainual's templates that they have, the Change Champions.
My heart.
So we took the Change Champions, it was a template they have in the library, and we adapted it for our Training Champions is what we called it. And because we struggled to find people who were just invested in documentation. Some people, there's just not their skill set. They're not interested in it. They don't want to do it. So we ended up creating a program that's, we're in the first round of it. It's 6 months long. It'll be done next month. And people in our company got to apply for it. They get a stipend for being in the program. And all they had to do is dedicate 1 hour a week. And it's a 4-week cycle. So the first week, they meet with Lindsay on our team. They identify something that they either want to document or something that maybe needs to be reviewed. Then the second week, they don't meet that week. They get 1 hour to work on it. Third week, they meet with Lindsay. They get any feedback on it. And then the fourth week, they implement it. So whether that's implementing just by putting it in Trainual, maybe it needs actual hands-on training, they would work to determine that in the fourth week. And in the we're in the 5th month, but in the first 2 months, we created more documentation than we had in probably the 6 months prior. And then we're 5 months in, and we've not only created more documentation than we ever did, we've also reviewed and updated that documentation because you found people that were just that much more invested in it, and it's not their full-time job, they're not fully dedicated to it. But it's just one small aspect of their week for just a period of 6 months. And it's been really successful, and I think we're going to go for round 2 in January because it's just been such a great aspect or addition to our team.
Well, I know firsthand that it takes a special kind of person to pull off that program, so kudos to you, and I know Lindsay's been a big part of that too, so a round of applause for you guys for sure. Fun fact, the Change Champion program was the first template I documented at Trainual when I got here. It was really important to me. It was a program that I put together at my last organization. We were a PEO firm, and we had about 250 people. I was the director of operations and continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is tough. And in some way, we all are continuous improvement people in some way. And so I was really excited to put that together, to not just help one team, which I did in my last organization, but now to be able to give that to all of you, and to stand up here and hear someone that's implemented it successfully and has done it so beautifully kind of gives me goosebumps, because just full circle, the picture of that is incredible. I think the last question that I would have for you is, because we've obviously talked about process and training, and we've talked about finding the right people, the right seats, and now we're talking about culture. How do we tie that all together to bringing people back to the core goals and rallying them around those goals, and ensuring that everybody understands them and can kind of carry them out? Because I know that's something that you do really well.
Yeah, so for us, it was really important when we kind of started the training and development team to understand really what was the goal of the team. Obviously, the first goal was just put it in Trainual. But what do you do after that? So as we kind of got through that first hurdle, it's understanding what you're trying to achieve long term. So for us, we were trying to achieve, better efficiency, increased knowledge across the organization, having better onboarding. That was a huge point for us too, because our culture is so important to us. The onboarding had to be reflective of that. And so making sure that we had all of our goals aligned to what we're doing, both on the platform Trainual, but then just kind of in how that applies to everything else we're doing in the organization. How does what we're trying to document and process and optimize and delegate, how does that all align to kind of our OKRs or our goals that we have? That's at least how we've had that success, by tying all of that together and seeing it that way, by making it part of those core organization goal discussions.
Incredible. I've loved watching you guys, so amazing. Anything else you guys would like to share in our last minute or two here?
What are you looking at me for?
I think the most important thing is you have to make the time. And I know a common problem, and I've heard this kind of sprinkled throughout in conversations with a lot of our teams out here, is that it's hard sometimes. You're the only one that's invested in working in Trainual, but getting those people on your team, the baby steps is how you bring them in. So that can be hey, let's schedule a one-on-one workshop over Zoom and let's look at this process together. But starting with those small interactions can get some people on your team, and then when they're a little bit more comfortable using that, Trainual University has been very helpful to, I'm having some of my team, there they are over there, work on that, and it's just been so instrumental to make sure that you need to scale yourself as well as you're building Trainual. You can't be the only one doing it. So scaling your team is also a huge deal.
I'm surprised you didn't get a cheer from Sean. That was awfully quiet.
Come on, Sean, there we go.
I have one other tip or just kind of thing I want to share. Something that I didn't know if you all knew, and I just kind of impromptu saying this, so Mallory, sorry, but reaching out to the Trainual team. So Mallory and Sean, for us, have been instrumental in what we've done thus far. We've reached out kind of through the official Trainual channels, and I don't know if you want me to say this, so maybe ask, but I also reached out to them on LinkedIn for help. But
you can connect with us on LinkedIn.
But that was a really big point for us. So Mallory and Sean helped us both with our training champions. When we started the team, Sean got on and went through our Trainual account with us and gave us tips and guidance similar to what he did today. So I know earlier they had talked about reaching out to their CS team, but definitely considering and looking at what's available from Trainual, because for us, I think that's what took us to the next level for sure.
In the words of Sean, we love to geek out with you guys, so definitely reach out to us. We're happy to do it anytime. Well, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much for joining us today on the customer panel. So proud of you guys and just love being on this journey with you, so thank you so much.